theyeshiva.net.
The fifth perek of Masechta Sukkah, which begins with the words Hachalil, the flute, perek Hachalil, deals with what's known as Simchas Beis Hashoava. What was Simchas Beis Hashoava according to the literal interpretation when you read the Mishnah and the Gemara? On Sukkot there was a special mitzvah every single morning of Sukkot to pour water on the Mizbeach, on the altar, known as Nisuch HaMayim. It's not a mitzvah that says anywhere in Chumash. It's a mitzvah that was given over halacha l'Moshe Misinai by the oral tradition, even though there are hints in Chumash, but it's not explicit in Chumash. This is a mitzvah to pour water every morning on the Mizbeach after they offered the Tamid Shel Shachar, the morning offering, when they used to anyway pour wine on the Mizbeach. On Sukkot for 7 days they also poured water, Nisuch HaMayim. The night preceding this mitzvah they would celebrate, dance, jump, hop, sing, say praises, play music throughout the night, which is the literal reason why it's called Simchas Beis Hashoava. The simcha, the joy, in the place of Beis is the home, the place. Hashoava connected to the drawing of the water. Every morning at dawn they would go to draw water from the Shiloach spring in Yerushalayim. They would go down from the Temple Mount, from the Rabbi to bring the water. They would retrieve the water and come back up, and it would be poured by a kohen on the Mizbeach. The Gemara brings the pasuk in Yeshaya, Perek Yud Beis, Usha'aftem mayim b'sasain mimayne hayeshua. You should draw water with joy, with festivity, from the well springs of salvation. This is the source, the Gemara says, for the term Simchas Beis Hashoava, that you was a simcha, they drew the water with joy. So therefore, since this mitzvah went for 7 days, all 7 days of Sukkot you poured water, the night before, they would dance all night and sing all night in preparation for this mitzvah of Nisuch HaMayim. That's how most people who learn the Mishnah and the Gemara of Perek Hachalil, where the Mishnah and the Gemara elaborate on the joy, the nature of the joy, what took place, who danced, how they danced, the juggling, the light that lit up the whole Yerushalayim, the tremendous festivities, etc., etc., with many details in the Mishnah and Gemara of the 5th chapter of Sukkah. It's connected to the pouring of the water in the morning of Sukkot, Simchas Beis Hashoava. In fact, Rashi has an expression at the beginning of that perek in Masechta Sukkah. Rashi says, on the first time the Mishnah says Simchas Beis Hashoava, that the flute, Hachalil, the flute that they played by Simchas Beis Hashoava, did not override Shabbos or Yom Tov, which means Friday night or the first night of Yom Tov Sukkot, they would not do the Simchas Beis Hashoava because they would not use the musical instruments. It's not doich, it doesn't override Shabbos and Yom Tov. So Rashi says, what's Simchas Beis Hashoava? Rashi says that kol simchazu eina ela b'shvil Nisuch HaMayim. This whole simcha came because of the pouring of the water. Now a whole separate sugya is, why did this mitzvah inspire such extraordinary joy? Usually wine is what brings joy. Water doesn't bring joy. I never heard anybody say, oh, I was depressed last night, so I went for a drink, and I had 8 shots of water, and I was mamish smashed, and there went my night. With wine, I have heard it, not with water. For the pouring of the wine, there was nothing going on. For the pouring of the water, there was ecstatic joy. That's a big question, a general question. It's not the topic of the Shia today. What is startling is, and that's what we're going to focus on today, is the perspective of the Rambam. When somebody learns Rambam, the Yad HaChazaka of the Rambam, and learns these halachas, a whole new picture emerges. We're going to learn inside the Rambam Hilchis Lulav Perek Ches. The Rambam put together Hilchis Shofar, Sukkah, and Lulav together in his Mishnah Torah Yada Chazaka. In the 8th chapter of Hilchis Lulav, at the end, this is the end of all Hilchis Lulav, the Rambam dedicates a few halachas to what we call Simchas Beis Hashoava. He somehow has a whole different definition of it, a whole different picture of it. Zog the Rambam. Now listen to his words. Afal pisha kol hamoyados mitzvah l'smayach behen. Even though there's a mitzvah to celebrate, to rejoice, to be happy throughout all the Yomim Tovim, and what he means kol hamoyados is of course Pesach and Shavuos. And this mitzvah is a clear mitzvah. The Rambam says in Hilchis Yom Tov, Perek Vav, there's a mitzvah that says in Parshas Re'eh, v'samachta b'chagecha ato vincho vitecha. You, your spouse, that's you goes men and women, your son, your daughter, should rejoice b'chagecha in your holidays. The holidays are enumerated in the same parsha right before Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. So there's a mitzvah to celebrate and be joyous all the holidays. B'chag HaSukkos, ha'isa sham b'mikdash simcha yiseira. On Sukkot, there in the Beis HaMikdash, there was an additional joy. Shenemar, because the pasuk says in Parshas Emer, Usmachtem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yomim. You should rejoice before Hashem your God for 7 days. This pasuk is referring to Parshas Emer exclusively by Sukkot. It says, we read it on the first days of Sukkot in the Kriyas HaTorah. Ulakachtem lachem bayom harishon pri etzader kapes tmarim anaf etzaves v'arvei nochal. Usmachtem lifnei Adonai Eloheichem shivas yomim. On the first day of Sukkot, you should take the 4 minim, the lulav, the esrog, the hados, and the arava. Well, I did it the wrong order, but that's fine for now. You take the 4 species, and you should rejoice before Hashem for 7 days. This says on Sukkot. So it seems like what the Rambam is saying is this pasuk is teaching us that before Hashem, lifnei Hashem Elokeichem, there's a special mitzvah on Sukkot to have an extra simcha, because in front of God you celebrate 7 days. So what we see here from the Rambam is lifnei Hashem Elokeichem is referring to the Beis HaMikdash, in the presence of Hashem, where the Shechina is revealed, which is the Beis HaMikdash. You should celebrate for 7 days, but every Yom Tov there's a mitzvah of simcha. So that's why he says in the Beis HaMikdash, there was a mitzvah for a whole new level of simcha, a whole extra simcha for 7 days, lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. Keitzad hoyu oisen. What would they do in order to facilitate, to implement this mitzvah? So the Rambam says, Erev Yom Tov Harishon hayu mesaknim b'mikdash makam l'noshim el-mailu l'anoshim el-mata kadesh lo yizarvu elu yimelu. Erev Yom Tov, meaning a day before Sukkot, Erev of the first day of Sukkot, they would fix up, they would build in the Beis HaMikdash a special place designated for women on top, for men on bottom, so they shouldn't mingle, they shouldn't mix. Umaschilin l'smoyach mitzvah Yom Tov Harishon. So the place was already fixed before Yom Tov. They would start celebrating the simcha, the joy would start mitzvah Yom Tov Rishon, meaning the first night of Chol HaMoed. Of course, there's 1 day Sukkot here, first day of Sukkot. That night, this year would be, in other words, Thursday night, the first night of Chol HaMoed, mitzvah, the first day of Sukkot. They would start the simcha. V'chein b'chol yoyim v'yoyim mei chayil shel moed, and this would be every single day, meaning every single evening of all the days of Chol HaMoed. Maschilin mei achar sheyakrivu tomid shel ben arbayim l'smoyach sha'ar hayoyim kol halayla. It would begin right after they offered the afternoon tamid, the carbon tamid, which was offered early afternoon. The rest of the day and all the night would start the simcha. So simcha actually wouldn't start at night. It would already start a few hours before sunset, from after the tamid shel ben arbayim, which was already towards evening, and then the whole night, every single night of Sukkot. Why? Because the pasuk says, "Usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yomim." Ve'ei chaysa simcha zu. What did it look like? Rambam says they would be happy. What did it look like? Hecholel maka. The flute would play. Umenagnin, and they would sing. They would play bekinner with a harp and evolim with a lyre, mitzlasayim with cymbals. V'chol echad ve'echad b'kli shir sheyodei l'nagen. But every individual would come with any musical instrument that he knows how to play, and he would bring it and play with it. Umishi yodei bepeh bepeh. Whoever knew a good vocalist would use their mouth. You couldn't play a musical instrument, but you knew how to sing. You sang with your mouth. V'roigtin, they would dance. Umasapkin, they would clap their hands on the thighs. Umetapchen, they would clap their hands together. Umefazezin, they would hop, they would jump and hop and leap. Umecharkerin, they would whistle. Kol echad ve'echad k'moshe yedei, every person according to his skill and talent. You had dancers and you had hoppers and you had athletes and those who are good with acrobats and those who are whistlers and those who can play, vocalists and musicians, everyone would express their talent. And they would convey words of song and praise. This joy does not postpone, override, not Shabbos and not Yom Tov, which is why the Rambam said it started Motzai Yom Tov, and the night of Chol HaMoed, if it would be a Friday night, do it that night. Mitzvah laharbes b'simcha. It's a mitzvah to be marbe, to increase this joy. But the simcha was not performed by amayaretz, by the ignorant ones or the light-headed ones or anybody who wanted. Ella, G'dolei Chachmi Yisrael, the great sages, Rashi HaYeshivas, the heads of the yeshivas, Sanhedrin, the members of this Jewish Supreme Court, Rachsidim, the pious ones, Haskenim, the elders, V'anshei Mais, and men of action. Heim shaya meraktin and masapkin and managnin usmeichin b'mikdash b'mei Chag HaSukkos. They were the ones who would dance, who would clap their hands, who would sing, who would rejoice in the Beis HaMikdash during the days of Sukkos. Aval kol ha'am ha'anashim v'hanashim. The entire nation, men and women, kulam bayin liris v'lishmaya. They would all come to observe, to see, and to hear. Zog the Rambam weiter. He finished describing the Simcha of Sukkos. He concludes, and this is the end of Hilchos Lulav, HaSimcha sheyismach adam ba'asiyas hamitzvos u'ba'avas hakel shetziva behen avodah gdolehi. The joy that a person rejoices in doing mitzvahs and in love of Hashem, who commanded these mitzvahs, is a tremendous avodah. It's a great service. Somebody who prevents himself from this joy, it's worthy to exact penalty from him, punishment from him, as the pasuk says in the Teichach and Kisavai, that all this happens because you did not serve Hashem with joy. And somebody who plays arrogance, he's arrogant, his das, his mind is pompous. And he focuses on honoring himself. In his own eyes, he becomes very self-conscious and very self-aware how he has to respect himself in these places where people are joyous. In other words, it's below his dignity to what we would call let loose and be happy. He's both a sinner and a fool. Shlomo says in Mishlei Chafei, Proverbs 25, don't suddenly become purified, be beautified before the king. Whoever humbles himself, and allows his body to be light, to be free, to be loose in these places, he is the great one, the respected one, the one who serves God out of love. David, the king of the Jewish people, says, in what context? He's now going to quote the story that we have in Shmuel Beis, Perik Vav. David HaMelech brings the Aron for the first time. He brings the Aron from the home of Ovid, he brings it to Ir David, to Yerushalayim, and as they're bringing the Aron, David is dancing, hopping, whistling, leaping, jumping. And David's wife, Michal Bas Shaul, the daughter of Shaul, sees out the window how her husband, the king, is really completely uninhibited, and she gives him a shtickle musar. Basically, sepasnish, this is not how a king should behave. She said, you lowered yourself, you humbled yourself. The maids, the servants, and the maidservants are disgusted by your behavior. In front of all of them, you humbled yourself, you degraded your honor. This is not how a man of dignity behaves. David HaMelech answers, V'nikaloisi oid mizois. If only I could have been even more light and more uninhibited, vayisi shafal be'enai, and even be more humble, I would have done that. Ve'ein ha'gdula v'ha'kaved ela l'smayach l'fnei Hashem, the Rambam says. Greatness and honor is only to celebrate, to be joyous in the presence of God. Shenemar, the same story, HaMelech David mefazes u'mecharker l'fnei Hashem. The King David was jumping, hopping, dancing, leaping. Mecharker, most translate as whistling or another form of dancing. Lifnei Hashem, in front of Hashem. And this concludes Hilchos Lulav in the Rambam. What do you notice right away here when you see the Rambam? He does not say a word about Nisach HaMayim. Not a word about Simchas Beis Hashoava. Nothing. Deleted. Doesn't exist. He does not mention even one time. They poured the water the night before they poured the water. The whole mitzvah of Nisach HaMayim is completely not existing here in the context of the Simcha of Sukkot. Even the word Beis Hashoava is not existing. Completely not. The brisker of in Chidushei Hagriz, Rabbi Yitzchak Chidushei Hagriz, Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Halevi Soloveitchik, Rabbi Velvel Brisker, the brisker of, has a shtickle on this, quoting a contemporary of his, somebody a little older than him, who's known as Rabbi Yerucham Fishel Parlo, who was a very interesting Jew. He was a Jew who was a student of his father, of Reb Chaim Brisker, and before that a student of the Netziv in Volozhin, and before that a student of Rabbi Yeshua Leib Diskin, who was the Rav of Lomzha, of Mezrich, and of Brisk, later went to Yerushalayim. He had a student, Rabbi Yerucham Fishel Parlo. He was a businessman and a Gon Oilam. And he wrote a sefer, a whole commentary on Sefer HaMitzvahs of Reb Sadia Gaon, that created a very big commotion. It's an extraordinary work. Later he moved to Yerushalayim, where he passed away, I think, in 1934, before the war, Tafresh Tzadik Dalet. So the Brisker Rav brings the footnotes, the Haggas of Rabbi Yerucham Fishel Parlo, to the Sefer HaMitzvah of Sadia Gaon, where Rabbi Parlo, in his Sefer HaMitzvahs L'Rasag, explores this Rambam at length and makes this ha'ara that the Brisker Rav elaborates on, that the Rambam completely ignores here the concept of Beis Hashoava and the concept of Nisach HaMayim, which is beyond strange. Any person, you learn the Mishnah and the Gemara Perek Achal, Rashi says, Kol Simcha Zu Eina Ba Ela B'Shvil Nisach HaMayim. He doesn't bring the pasuk of Shafta Mayim B'Sasan. He doesn't discuss the pouring of the water. Now, it's not that the Rambam doesn't bring the mitzvah of Nisach HaMayim. The Rambam can't do that. The Rambam's Yada Chazaka, as he says in his introduction, brings every halacha of Kol HaTorah Kula. The Rambam writes in his Akdama to Yada Chazaka, you read Teresh B'Ksav, you read my Sefer, I called it Mishnah Torah, the second to Torah, Eino Tzarech L'Shum Sefer Acha B'Neihem. You don't need any other Sefer. You have Teresh B'Ksav and you have the Mishnah Torah, you know every halacha, both Min HaTorah and Midirabbanon, everything till the time of the Rambam that's compiled here. So it, of course, is impossible. The Rambam even brought halachas of Mashiach. He brought halachas of Beis HaMikdash. The Rambam says, Kol HaTorah Kol, the whole Torah is here. Of course, this is God's sense of humor. The Rambam says, if you read this and Tanakh, you don't need any other Sefer. Which Sefer triggered the most commentaries and the most explanations on it from all the Svarim and Yiddishkeit is the Rambam. The Rambam who said you don't need any other Sefer besides this Sefer, that Sefer got the most commentaries, the most Mefarshim on it. Mishnah Torah Yada Chazaka La Rambam. The Rambam brings that you have to do Nisach HaMayim. It's a mitzvah. It's halacha l'Moshe Missinai. The Tzdukim didn't believe in it, and there was a tremendous tragedy as a result, which the Rambam himself brings. But the Rambam brings it completely as part of the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash. You'll take a look. Next source, Rambam Hilchos Tmidin u'Musaf and Perek Yud. This is the Rambam that discusses the order of the day, the Tmidin and the Musafim every day, every Shabbos. So he says, Perek Yud, Halacha Dalet, Kol Shivas Yimei HaChag, Menaschin HaSamayim Al Gabi HaMizbeach. For 7 days of Sukkot, they poured water on the Mizbeach. V'davar zeh halacha l'Moshe Misinai. There's no pasuk for this. This was a tradition that Moshe gave from Sinai. As they were pouring the wine after the Talmud Shel Shachar, separately they would pour the water. They had a flask of gold. It contained 3 lugim. They would fill it up every morning from the Shiloach spring. They would come to the gate of water in the Harabayas. They would blow with the trumpets. The Kohen went up the ramp, turned to the left, poured the water from the flask into a sefel, into a bucket that was there in the Mizbeach, and it was poured onto the altar, as the Rambam continues. That's it. Over there he doesn't mention there was dancing, no fanfare, no drama. This was a mitzvah every morning of Sukkot, Nisach HaMayim. You have that. One more place in Rambam, Hilchas Klei HaMikdash Perek Ches, where he speaks about the garments of the Koyanim. So he says, Michnasei HaKoyanim et yoitim shabolu v'avnatayim, hayoisim mem psilis, umadlikin bem b'mikdash b'simchas beis Hashoava. When Koyanim's pants, or their girdles, their avnetim, their gartels, their belts, rotted away when they became old, they would weave them into wicks, and those wicks were used to light up the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash during Simchas Beis Hashoava. And from the tunics of the Koyanim, they would make wicks for the menorah, which they needed every day to light in the Beis HaMikdash, every night, every morning. So here once, Derech Agav and Hilchas Klei HaMikdash, he used the words Simchas Beis Hashoava. Where did they get the wicks to light up the menorahs that they needed at night? So it should be light, they needed wicks. Those wicks they got from the old pants and the old gartlach of the Koyanim. Taisvis over there asks, this is a Gemara, this is also in Hachalel, in last parak of Sukkah. Taisvis says, why didn't they use the Ksoinus for Simchas Beis Hashoava? Taisvis Yom says, why didn't they use the Mitznefes? The Mikboyes, the Koyanim also had hats, they were also made of linen, they could use those two for wicks for Simchas Beis Hashoava. That's an interesting question, why Dafka, the pants and the gartlach were used for Simchas Beis Hashoava? Taisvis doesn't have an answer for it, the Taisvis Yom doesn't have an answer for it. It's an interesting thing that they used only the avnet and the mechnasayim for Simchas Beis Hashoava. That's another sugya. It's not for today's shir. Mekanisht altsdecken. So here's fascinating. In one place, the Rambam has Nisach HaMayim just as a mitzvah. In another place, the Rambam mentions Simchas Beis Hashoava completely derech agav, just because he's discussing what you did with the old clothes of the Koyanim. So part of it was used for the menorah, and part of it was used for the menorahs of Simchas Beis Hashoava. But when it comes to the laws of Hilchas, Shofar, Sukkah, and Lulav, where he's discussing the halachas of Sukkahs, not as part of the daily avoid in the Beis HaMikdash, but all the halachas of Sukkah, all the halachas of Lulav, he brings in the whole Simcha, and he describes it in detail. No mention of Beis Hashoava, no mention of Nisach HaMayim. What do we learn from this Rambam? The Brisker Rav explains, the Chidushei HaGriz explains, and Rabbi Yerucham Fischel Perlo explain, and they both explain this at length, that you see here from the Rambam that he learned the sugya of the Gemara and the Mishnah differently than most learn. The Rambam learned that the Simcha had nothing to do with pouring of the water. There was a mitzvah of Nisach HaMayim, that's true. The night before they would dance, that's also true. But the two were not connected. The mitzvah of Nisach HaMayim is a mitzvah. Halacha l'Moshe Sinai. They poured every morning water. The whole concept of what we call Simchas Beis Hashoava, which he doesn't even mention by name here in Hilchas Lulav, is a separate din. What's the din? The din is, it says, V'smachtem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yamim. You should celebrate before Hashem on Sukkot for 7 days. So the Rambam learns that this is a din not in Nisach HaMayim, it's a din in Simchas Yom Tov of Sukkot. Every Yom Tov there's a mitzvah of Simcha v'samachta b'chagecha, including Sukkot, outside of the Beis HaMikdash. If you're living in Tzfas, if you're living in Haifa, if you're living in the United States of America, there's a mitzvah v'samachta b'chagecha, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. That's a mitzvah. That's how the Rambam starts off. Kol ha'moyados mitzvah l'smayach b'hen. In addition to that biblical mitzvah minat Torah of Simchas Yom Tov, by every Yom Tov, including Sukkos, anywhere where a Jew lives, v'samachta b'chagecha, you and your wife and your children, etc., there's a special mitzvah minat Torah, usmachtem lifnei Hashem Elokeichem, in front of Hashem. Meaning, of course, Maloi Chalaretz Kvoide, but the place where the Shechina is manifested, V'shachanti b'soichem in the Beis HaMikdash, that's called Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. There should be a special simcha when? 7 days. Which 7 days? You're talking about Sukkot, the 7 days of Sukkot. So from here we learn a whole new idea. There's a mitzvah in Torah to make a special simcha only in the Beis HaMikdash. What was this simcha? This is the simcha they did, the Rambam says. They had a pasuk in Emor. So for 7 days, they made a special simcha lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. They finished the Talmud Shel Bein HaArbayim. They would start dancing and celebrating and singing and jumping and saying divrei shirim, playing instruments as he describes in detail what happened, how it happened, when it happened, who did it, who did not do it. That's the simcha of the Rambam. It says, U'sha'afta mayim b'sasan mimayne ha'yeshua. The pasuk says, U'sha'afta mayim b'sasan mimayne ha'yeshua, which the Rambam himself, which the Rambam doesn't bring, but the Gemara in Perek HaCholol brings that pasuk. So you have to say, as these Mefarshim, as these Acharonim explain, that this pasuk gave the Chazal a reason to combine this simcha with Nisach HaMayim. In other words, what time did they celebrate? They could have done it in the morning. They could have done it in the afternoon. They did it at night before Nisach HaMayim. They didn't see this pasuk, which says in Yeshaya, doesn't say in Chumash, as the mitzvah of the simcha. U'sha'afta mayim b'sasan was a support, what we call an asmachta, not the source of the simcha. The source of the simcha is asmachta l'fnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim. This pasuk gave them reference when to do it. So when did they do it? They did it before the Sheivas Hamayim. That's when they did it. He doesn't see this as the source of the simcha. It's just a support that they had to define when they should do it. They did it at night, right before they went to draw the water. Shafta mayim b'sas. The Rambam also would learn, that's why we don't call it Simchas HaShayeva. It's not the Simcha of Shayeva. It's not the Simcha of drawing the water. Because they drew water, they became B'Simcha as a result of that mitzvah. No, that mitzvah doesn't associate with Simcha necessarily, more than any other mitzvah. Rather, Simchas Beis Hashoava. The Simcha, it's called, almost technically, the place that they built. The Rambam says they built a special place for the Simcha base. This place where they gathered together in the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash, and they had a place for women, and they had a place for men, and they used to build it every year, Erev Sukkot. This place was called Beis Hashoava. You could say, because from here they went to draw water. Tosfos brings from the Yerushalmi, Shemisham Shoyavim Ruach HaKodesh. It was called Simchas Beis Hashoava, not because they drew the water. From there they drew Ruach HaKodesh. Tosfos brings in Perek HaCholol, in the beginning of the Perek, from Yerushalmi Masechta Sukkah. Yerushalmi says that Yoina ben Amitai, about who we read on Yom Kippur, he got his Ruach HaKodesh during Simchas Beis Hashoava, so it's a whole different concept. But the Rambam doesn't get into it. He doesn't even use the word here, part of Hashoava, because it's not part of the halach, even though he uses the expression in Hilchos Klei HaMikdash. But you see from this Rambam, says Rabbi Yerucham Fischel Perlo, and the Griz, the Brisker of that, there are two completely separate dinim. There's the din of Nisach HaMayim, and there's the din of Simcha, Sukkos, Shivas Yamim, which created this whole special Simcha that we call Simchas Beis Hashoava. L'cha'ira, it's clear. However, when we start thinking about this, according to this, when we start reflecting on the Shitta of the Rambam, many questions immediately come to the surface. And I'm going to focus today on around 7 or 8 questions on this Rambam when you learn it well. Let's start al-Haseder. We're assuming that there's 2 separate dinim, and this means that there is a very drastic result of this. If you say it's part of Nisach HaMayim, halacha l'Moshe Messina is to pour water. There's no halacha l'Moshe Messina, you have to dance before you pour water. The rabbis, the Chachamim came and said, we're going to dance before we go draw the water. They found a pasuk, U'shafta mayim b'sasim, which is not in Chumash, it's not a Mitzvah sasim in Torah. U'shafta mayim b'sasim, which they connected. Doesn't say there a time. But it says U'shafta mayim b'sasim, and Sukkos do with Sheivas Hamayim. So from here, they have a good support that you should do it b'sasim, and thus they created the whole Simchas Beis Hashoava around Nisach HaMayim. The Rambam, however, gives us a whole different word. He has a straight pasuk. Usmachtem l'fnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim. That means, as he puts it, there's a mitzvah sesim in Torah in front of God, in the Beis HaMikdash. There's a special mitzvah to celebrate for 7 days, outside the mitzvah of celebrating Yom Tov B'chlal, Simchas Yom Tov, which is Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot also, outside of the Beis HaMikdash, but this is a special mitzvah in the Beis HaMikdash. If so, we have here a stira minei ubei. We have here a real contradiction in the Rambam. Why? The Rambam starts off, B'chag HaSukkos hoizer sham b'mikdash simchi yiseder shenemar esmachtem l'fnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim. That means the mitzvah in our Torah is that the simcha should continue for how many days? Quite clear. For 7 days. If it's for 7 days, all of Sukkot is 7 days. That means the first day is included in this mitzvah. You have to do it for 7 days. The next line, 2 lines later, is umaschilin l'smayach mimoitzoy yom tov harishon. You start the simcha mitzvah yom tov harishon. In other words, the first day is not part of the simcha. You're going to answer me. The Rambam himself says it. The Rambam himself says, at the end of Halacha Yud Gimel, Simcha zu eina doicha lo yas HaShabbos v'lo yas Yom Tov. This Simcha cannot override Shabbos or Yom Tov. That's why I told you, you start Mitzvah Yom Tov. We can't start the first night of Yom Tov, or Erev Yom Tov, which is going to go into Yom Tov, because this Simcha can't be doicha Yom Tov. But here is the big problem. Bishleima, if you say that this Simcha Yisera, this extra Simcha on Sukkos, is a din de Rabbanon, it's a chiyuv de Rabbanon, as Rashi himself says in Perek HaCholah, when the Gemara explains that they couldn't play flutes on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Why couldn't they play flutes on Shabbos and Yom Tov? Because the Gemara says this is an Issur de Rabbanon. You're not allowed to play musical instruments Shabbos and Yom Tov. Min HaTorah, you're allowed to play musical instruments on Shabbos and Yom Tov. You could play harp, and you can drum, and you can play your flutes, and you can play your cymbals, and everything is fine on Shabbos and Yom Tov. The Rabbanon, the Chazal, in a Mishnah in Beit Lamed Vav, prohibited playing musical instruments on Shabbos and Yom Tov. Why? As Chazal explained, the Gemara explains, Shema Yisake, Klei Shir. You may come to repair the musical instruments, which would be an Isser Min HaTorah of Tikkun Mana, of Makabah Patish, of fixing or making a keli on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So Min HaTorah you're allowed, and Midrabanan you're not. If you say this whole Simcha is a din de Rabbanan, as Rashi says, L'chavei ves ha-mitzvah, he puts it. They wanted to show love to the mitzvah of Nisach HaMayim, so they added this whole dramatic fanfare, drama, dancing, singing a whole night. I understand. Shabbos, we're not doing it. We'll pour the water. Yom Tov, we're not doing it. That's all if you say that it's a din de Rabbanon. So the first day of Yom Tov, there couldn't be Simcha, because the Simcha was not just people singing. The Simcha was not just saying praises. It was using musical instruments. You can't say that the Chiyuv HaSimcha Med Rabbanon should override the Isur to use musical instruments, which is also the Rabbanon. But if the Rambam is telling us that the Simcha Yisera in the Beis HaMikdash for 7 days is a tzivui min HaTorah shenemar usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yamim, how can the mitzvah min HaTorah, shouldn't the chiyuv d'oraisa to celebrate for 7 days of Sukkot lifnei Hashem Elokeichem not override the Isur de Rabbanon, the rabbinic prohibition of not using musical instruments on Shabbos and Yom Tov? Especially, we know a klal. The Gemara says, Ein Shvus b'mikdash, a Gemara in Psachim, a Gemara in Beitza. In the Beis HaMikdash, generally, they didn't practice the rabbinic prohibitions. All the halachas of Shvus primarily don't apply in the Beis HaMikdash, and there was a reason for it. Because for different reasons, one of them is Kohanim Zrizimheim, and therefore they weren't worried that they're going to bring to biblical violations. So that's a general principle of Ein Shvus b'mikdash. But even if not that, even without that, especially Ein Shvus b'mikdash, and yet here, the whole thing was cancelled out. The Rambam says it starts Mitzvah Yom Tov. Now Tosfos, in Masechta Sukkah and Perek HaCholah, Sukkah Daf Nun, asks this question, Ein Shvus b'mikdash. Why did they not allow Simchas Beis Hashoava, the first night of Yom Tov, or Shabbos Chol HaMoed Sukkos? Ein Shvus, what's the problem? You're allowed to sing. You're not allowed to dance. You're not allowed to play musical instruments. It's only a rabbinic problem. It's only a rabbinic prohibition. It's in the Beis HaMikdash. We're not doing it elsewhere. Tosfos asks already this question. Tosfos gives 2 answers. One answer, Tosfos gives a very interesting answer. Daf Nun Amud Beis, he says, they didn't use one musical instruments. They used dozens. They may have used hundreds. There may have been thousands, because everybody came with their musical instruments. He says there, the chashash that it's going to break and somebody's going to repair it is far, far more serious than in a regular situation. We have so many musical instruments, so many people. Tosfos says, so another vart. His first answer actually, on Daf Nun Amud Aleph, a different Tosfos is, since this simcha is only a simcha yisera. It's an extra, what we would call an extracurricular activity. It's not part of the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore they kept the shvus. They kept the shvus because it's just an extra simcha. Nisach hamayim they're doing anyway. It's just an extra simcha that the rabbis instituted. So therefore, Tosfos says they kept up the shvus and they were doich. This all works if you hold it's a din d'Rabbanan. I understand. So there's no need, even though you say ain't shvus b'mikdash, they still maintain this issur of playing musical instruments for the above two reasons. But loy the Rambam, mitzvahs esim in HaTorah, they cancelled one day. Maschilin l'smoyach mi motzai yom tov harishin ein adoichel lo Shabbos lo yom tov. That's number one. The Rambam says the mitzvah is the simcha alein. Very good. If so, the words of the Rambam are difficult. Before even he spoke about musical instruments, he says, Maschilin lismoyach mimatzah yom tov harishin. Before even. Huh? Good. Doesn't say in the pasuk klei. So the Rambam says, before musical instruments. So smach lefnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim. What did they do? They made a special place erev Yom Tov. And he didn't even mention yet music. Umaschilin lismoyach mimatzah yom tov harishin. Later in Halacha Yud Gimel he says ve'echais estem chazu. He didn't even mention klei shir yet. Look in the Rambam. Klei shir is the next halacha. He'echais estem chazu. Sagst du? No, that's Halacha Yud Beis. Ve'echais estem chazu b'chlal the simcha l'chayra. Right, but when you're reading Halacha Yud Beis, but Parshas Maschilin L'Smoyach means what? I'm saying it's a little hard to understand, right? If you would first say the musical instruments, you could say that's a prat. You could say, the Rambam would say, the Rabbanon told us how to do the simcha. So even though they left the general simcha, that's what you're saying. The general simcha they're not touching. They're touching the certain prat. You wanted to say something? Let's now go to something else. The Rambam says, "Usmachtem lefnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim," means this whole new type of simcha. Asks Rabbi Yerucham Fischl Perlo, which the Brisker of brings, as I mentioned in the Chidush Agriz. It's fascinating. The Rambam has this whole limud of Usmachtem lefnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim that's not mentioned in Shas, not in Bavli, not in Yerushalmi. Where did the Rambam get this idea that it doesn't mean the regular Simchas Yom Tov? You should rejoice before Hashem Shivas Yamim. And the Rambam says it's a whole new concept that doesn't exist other Yamim Tovim. That's a fascinating idea. What's the source of the Rambam? What's more difficult and even more complex is the Rambam already used this pasuk for something else, which is the literal interpretation of the pasuk. The Rambam himself in Hilchas Lulav, in the previous Halacha Perek Zayin, says, Mitzvahs Lulav is the first day of Sukkot. It says, "Ulekachtem lachem b'yoyim harishon pri etzader kapas madam anafetz avos arvinach." And the Rambam says, "Ubemikdash levadoy noit lenoisei b'chol yoyim mishivas yemei hachag shenemar usmachtem lefnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim." Only in the Beis Hamikdash did you shake lulav and estrik for 7 days. Why? Because lekachtem lachem b'yoyim harishon is everywhere in the world, wherever there's a Jew. In Eretz Yisrael, Chutz La'aretz. Ulifnei Hashem alekechem. In front of Hashem, you should rejoice. With what? With the Daled Minim that I just spoke about in the same pasuk, Shivas Yamim. And that's why, in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they only shook lulav everywhere else 1 day. In the Beis Hamikdash, 7 days. The Mishnah says in Masechta Rosh Hashanah, Meshacharav Beis Hamikdash, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was mesaken sheyehei lulav nitel kol shiva even bigvulin, that all Jews should shake Daled Minim all 7 days of Sukkot, besides Shabbos, as we do today, as we just shook this morning. Why? Zeicher l'mikdash. To remember what happened l'fnei Hashem alekechem, as the Gemara explains in Rosh Hashanah, Tziyon ein deirish la miklal, the boye drisha, Rabbi Yochanan was mesaken zeicher l'mikdash. Got it. So the Rambam himself in the earlier Perek gave us the explanation of Usmachtem lefnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim. It means you have to shake lulav 7 days of Sukkot. Suddenly in Perek Ches, the next Perek, Usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yamim, becomes a source of a new mitzvah sesem min HaTorah, to make a special simcha besides Simchas Yom Tov, 7 days of Sukkos. And not only that, it's with such power and confidence, disconnected from Shafta Mayim B'Sasin U'Maynei Yeshua, disconnected from a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, just to add to the Nisach HaMayim, like Rashi says in Masechta Sukkah, L'chavev HaMitzvah, and it's all from this pasuk, L'smachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yamim. Which brings us to the next piece. Take a look in Halacha Yudalet. Mitzvah l'harbiz b'simcha zu, and suddenly he throws a bombshell. Don't think whoever wanted to do this mitzvah can do it. Not so simple. This is a pella. You're telling me that it's a mitzvah sesem min HaTorah, smachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yamim. Suddenly, there's limitations. Whoever wants to do it can do it. We don't have any other mitzvah like this. If you tell me again, the Rabbanon were masakin a special dancing for Nisach HaMayim, they were masakin it in a certain way. They said, as the Mishnah says, Chassidim danced, Anshe Maisa danced, other people came to watch. But the Rambam, who learns it's all the pasuk Usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yamim, special mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov and Sukkos, as Rabbi Yerucham Fischel Perlo and the Brisker of Amechiach from this Rambam. So number one, why would you make such distinctions in a mitzvah saseh min HaTorah? You'll say the mitzvah of lulav, wait, not everybody can do it. Why? What? And what's the source for such a thing, to make such a distinction?
They're saying the mitzvah is simcha. It's the same thing. The mitzvah is the simcha, not the thing. So maybe they're probably, that all the people that are not right to do it, maybe they don't have the chiyuv. It's not because they don't have the chiyuv of the mitzvah. They don't have the chiyuv of the klishir. In other words, the mitzvah that rise the Rambam learns is the simcha. Adka. Now, all the kelim and everything else, that's not the mitzvah itself. That's the way how to bring it back to them. So okay, very good. So you're saying is not referring to the mitzvah of this Simcha Yisera on Sukkos. But you see, that's the same word you said before. Very good. Lishitase. Lishitase. But you see the problem, the challenge in the Lashon Rambam here. Right? That this distinction is completely eclipsed. Even before he starts with the musical instruments, like I told you before, he says Maschilin l'smayach b'mitzah yom tov harishon. Before he mentioned a word about all the pratim and the simcha that you're saying about the Rabbanan. That's the pella. Then the Rambam speaks about heichos simchazu. Then he says mitzvah laharbiz b'simchazu, b'pashtus. How would you read this? B'simchazu. He says Maschilin he doesn't mean the simcha. It means how do you bring about to get to the simcha of the mitzvah essay. That's the hemshah. In other words, how do you get to the simcha, which is the mitzvah deraisa, which everyone's obligated to do? And then he brings up who has to get to the. You
would write it like this. Or shafta mayim b'sasin he doesn't bring. That's all. Right, that's the shaila. That's we know that's the problem. I'm asking about the Lashon Rambam. Then he start looking Yudalit. Mitzvah laharbiz b'simcha zu b'pashtus. This simcha that we're talking about, and suddenly, if it's a mitzvah, why would you do this? First of all, how could you do it? What's your source for it? And why would you make these distinctions? In a mitzvah essay, mamish min HaTorah, that's given to the Jewish people. There's something going on here. Again, if you tell me that the whole din is a din d'Rabbanan mitzad nisach hamayim, no. But here you're telling me it's a mitzvah essay min HaTorah. Now, very good. And good gesagt. Liris v'lishmaya was their simcha. You're not telling me they're not sameach. They're sameach. There's different ways of simcha. There's liris v'lishmaya. I'm asking you another shaila. You're right. But if it's a mitzvah esim in HaTorah, smachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yamim, and they're just teaching up how you do this mitzvah esim in HaTorah, like they do with so many mitzvahs,
So why would you make? How is it that you're making a chilukim in mitzvah if this is how you're doing the mitzvah? No, why would you do such a thing if this is an uptaich? If it's a lechatchila din derabanan, they made different din derabanan. There's a din like this, a din like this. You're saying it's a mitzvah that was given to all Jews. Chachamim can't come and say this mitzvah it's a mitzvah to all Jews. They're uptaiching how you do the mitzvah, but they're making differences if this is how you do the mitzvah. You're right, you do it through lidas v'lishmaya. And also, what's the source for this? What would be the source in Torah? You would need a source in Torah for this to make this difference. If this is really how you did the simcha. What's your first name? So Reb Moshe wants to be mechadish, that there's two separate things completely going on here. There's the smachten lefnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim, right? That's a mitzvah on every Jew, no difference who, as long as you're by the Beis Hamikdash, on Amaretz, Sanhedrin, Rosh Yeshivas, Chassidim, and Shemaisa. That's on every single person. Shabbos, Yom Tif, 7 days. How you do that simcha? I don't know. We got to figure that out. I don't know. Huh? That you do through lulav. That's right. But it's already getting complex. But the Rambam says here that there's a mitzvah of Simcha Yiseda without lulav. Now you're saying the Rabbanon came and said there's one particular way which you could do the Simcha, and here we're controlling it. Das is glad by there. Now I understand the problems. I know the questions. But you see here, l'chayda the taich is, like so many other mitzvahs, the Rabbanan gave a description how to do the mitzvah. It says, Basukas Teshva Shivas Yamim. What does that mean? It says, Pri Eitz Hada. What does that mean? It says to put on tefillin on your hand. What does that mean? Almost every mitzvah from Tayag mitzvahs needs elucidation, explanation, definition, description. What does that mean? Is it a goat? Is it milk? Is it fat? Etc. I don't have to elaborate. The Rambam discusses this at length in the introduction. So l'cha'ira from the Rambam it would seem that the Chazal described how to do the simcha. But that's the definition of the simcha, how the Chazal interpret it. If that's the case, which is l'cha'ira the Pashtus Mashmos HaRambam, we have these questions. We have these dilemmas. Another interesting thing is, where did the Rambam get these categories? The Mishnah just says, Chsidim va'anshe maisa. Chsidim va'anshe maisa would dance with torches in front of the Jews. The Rambam has Chsidim, the Rambam has anshe maisa. But suddenly the Rambam put in G'dolei Chachmei Yisrael, Rosh Yeshivas, Sanhedrin, Chsidim, Skenim, and anshe maisa. He took two titles of the Mishnah, and he added a whole other bunch of titles, which doesn't say, not in Mishnah, not in the Gemara. On the other hand, the Rambam surprises us in the opposite. The Gemara does bring another category. The Gemara brings Chsidim, Anshe Maisa, and Bali Tshuva. The Gemara discusses what the Chsidim said. A Braisa discusses that there were Chsidim, Anshe Maisa, not in the Mishnah, in the Braisa, in Masechta Sukkah, and Bali Tshuva. So you see there were three categories. And the Gemara says that the Chsidim Anshe Maisa would say, Ashrei Yalduseinu Shaloi Bisha Eziknuseinu. Fortunate to our youth that it didn't embarrass us in our old age. The Bali Tshuva would say, Ashrei Ziknuseinu Shechipra Yalduseinu. Fortunate to our older years which atoned for our youth. Elu ve'elu oimrim, Ashrei mi Shaloi Chata, Umi Shechata Yasha v'yim Chaloi. Now, not getting involved in this particular nusach, why this was chosen for Simchas Beis Hashoava to speak about kapara and shuva, looks like it's a hemshech to Yom Kippur. That's a separate sugya. The Rambam here doesn't put in Bali Tshuva. He puts in Chsidim and Anshe Maisa. He doesn't put in Bali Tshuva. Then the Rambam completely changes gears. From the Simcha of Sukkos, he goes in to a whole new halacha tesvav, Simcha sheyismach adam b'asiyas hamitzvos, all mitzvos, Uba'avas hakel shetziva ben is avoida gdoilei. And the Rambam rejects those who don't want to be part of that simcha because of arrogance and too much self-awareness and self-consciousness, and cautions us to learn from David HaMelech with David Mefazes and Mecharker B'chol Lifnei Hashem. How does this come in here in Hilchas Lulav when you're talking about the Simcha Yisera of Sukkos? So you might say, the Rambam really could have put it anywhere in Yad HaChazak. Wherever there's a mitzvah, there's Simcha Shel Mitzvah, and there's Avas HaKeil Shetziva Behen. But the Rambam chose a place where he's anyway talking about Simcha, which is here, he's talking about the Simcha of Sukkos, and so this is the place where he decided also to write about the Simcha for every mitzvah, including Lulav, including Sukkah, including every mitzvah of Tayag, mitzvah Satayra, which you do b'Simcha. What is difficult is, knowing the diuk of the Rambam already discussed previously in Hilchas Yom Tov, a whole section, Perek Vav of Hilchas Yom Tov, many halachas about Simchas Yom Tov. Because remember, mitzvah Simcha is every Yom Tov, as he says here also. V'samachta b'chagecha. And he discusses how you do the Simcha. And he discusses that the Simcha is not about becoming drunk and inebriated and intoxicated and becoming lightheaded and kalus rosh. And he discusses there in Perek Vav of Hilchas Yom Tov that the Simcha of Yom Tov is connected to Avas HaKeil and Avodas HaKeil and a mitzvah of Hashem. If so, it would seem that these halachas belong over there in Hilchas Yom Tov Perek Vav. First of all, it's the first place. Second of all, it doesn't only over there apply to Sukkos like here, but over there it's all the Yomim Tovim, so it's more. And Melni over there, he actually is talking about Simcha and Avodas Hashem outside of Yom Tov, which fits right with what he's saying here. Nonetheless, the Rambam chose to put this halacha here at the end of Hilchas Lulav. Okay, good no kashas. Let's get to the beer in the Shittas Rambam, the explanation of the Rambam. But the Rambam, you have to always learn his words very meticulously, very carefully. The Rambam opens up all these halachas, Perek Ches Halacha Yud Beis, where he starts off this discussion with an afal pi. Afal pi shekol hamoyed mitzvah l'smayach behen, b'chag ha-sukkos hoyse sham b'mikdash simcha yisera. He's telling you a story. I want to tell you a story. On Sukkos, in the Beis HaMikdash, there was an extra simcha. Shenemar, usmachtem lefnei Hashem alekechem, shivas yamim. The Rambam does not start off, even though all Yamim Tovim there's a mitzvah of simcha, mitzvah lasoi simcha yisera b'mikdash b'chag ha-sukkos, shenemar usmachtem lefnei Hashem alekechem, shivas yamim. Even though all Yamim Tovim there's a mitzvah of simcha, on Sukkos, in the Beis HaMikdash, there was a mitzvah to make and arrange an additional simcha, because it says, which would have been very straightforward, define the mitzvah and then tell us how they did it. The Rambam doesn't do it that way. The Rambam says, even though all Yamim Tovim there was a mitzvah of simcha, I want to tell you a fact. Sukkos in the Beis HaMikdash, there was an extra simcha. Shenemar, usmachtem lefnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim. What is the Rambam teaching us here? His lashon, if you read it well, gives you the definition of this halacha. The Rambam is not saying that the Torah gives a pasuk which gives us a new obligation on Sukkos. And the new obligation on Sukkos is a special simcha of 7 days. That's not what he's saying. And therefore the problem of what's the source, this is already used for lulav, is completely not an issue. The Rambam is not here to say that there's a new simcha on Sukkos based on a special mitzvahs essay min ha-Torah, usmachtem lefnei Hashem alekechem shivas yamim, which also explains why in his number of mitzvahs he doesn't have this as a separate mitzvah. A separate mitzvah that on Sukkos there was a special simcha outside of, he has Simchas Yom Tov as a mitzvah. But Sukkos there was a special simcha. Lulav he has a mitzvah. Simchas Yom Tov he has a mitzvah. Rabbi Yerucham Fischel Perlo asks, there should be a special mitzvah. Special mitzvah. No. He's not telling you there's a new mitzvah in Taryag Usmachtem, which based on that they made a new simcha in the Beis HaMikdash. What is the Rambam saying? The Rambam is saying something else. Means like this. The Chazal learned Torah. They looked at how the Yomim Tovim are described. This actually says in Yalkut Shimoini, V'samachta b'chagecha is a mitzvah on all the Yomim Tovim. Where does it say? It says it by Sukkos. By Pesach, the mitzvah of Simcha is not mentioned even once. By Shavuos, it's mentioned once, V'samachta. Ato, Vincha, by Sukkos. By Shavuos once. By Sukkos, 3 times. In Parshas Emer, Usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem Shivas Yamim, which the Rambam brings here. Second time, V'samachta b'chagecha, which is all chagecha, plural. But it says it by Sukkos at the end of Re'eh. And then further in Re'eh, Shivas Yamim Tachag Liva Hayisa Ach Sameach. Yalkut Shimoini says a Pella, Pesach not once, even though you learn it out from Sukkos. Shavuos once, Sukkos 3 times. And the Yalkut Shimoini explains why. He based it on the agricultural seasons, and also that it comes after Yom Kippur and this. Zog the Rambam. Since the Chazal learned Torah, and they saw that it says by Sukkos, Usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem Shivas Yamim. In other words, the Torah emphasizes the chiyuv of Simcha by Sukkos in the Beis HaMikdash more than by other Yomim Tovim. Usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem Shivas Yamim. Even though we already know v'samachta b'chagecha. We know there's a Simchas mitzvah, minat Torah of Simchas Yom Tov, Pesach, Shavuos, and we know it also Sukkos, because it says it clearly by Sukkos, not once, not twice. Nonetheless, the Torah comes and emphasizes again and again and again 3 times. And by the Beis HaMikdash, Usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem Shivas Yamim. That's why Hoisa b'Mikdasham Simcha Yisayr. That's why the Hanhaga in the Beis HaMikdash, the way they behaved in the Beis HaMikdash as a story is, that on Sukkot they felt, we can't just be like any other Yom Tov in the Beis HaMikdash where there's always a mitzvah of Simcha. Or even Sukkot outside in the world where there's a mitzvah of Simcha. There was in the Beis HaMikdash, it played itself out with this feeling that on Beis Sukkot the Chazal felt, we need to celebrate in a whole new, profound, intense, and potent way. In other words, the fact that the Torah, that Hashem emphasizes by Sukkos a special mitzvah of Simcha as part of Simchas Yom Tov, but emphasizes it again in context of the Beis HaMikdash of Hashem Elokeichem, says, you say in Yiddish, it triggered, it inspired, it evoked that in the Beis HaMikdash there should be a Simcha Yisera on the Simchas Yom Tov. In other words, it was a din in Simchas Yom Tov. It was an extension of Simchas Yom Tov. Part of the general mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov on Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkos in the whole world, and in Eretz Yisrael, and in Yerushalayim, and in the Beis HaMikdash, which is a mitzvah in the Beis HaMikdash too, for sure in the Beis HaMikdash. Part of that Simcha HaKlolos of Yom Tov, they celebrated it with a whole new force and a whole new potency. Was epis? The reason is because of the pasuk Usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem Shivas Yamim, which, by the way, there are those who struggle with the question. The Gemara says, "Eima arvin simcha b'simcha." You're not supposed to mix one simcha with another simcha. So there are those who struggle how the Chazal made the whole simcha connected to Nisach Hamayim, which is a mitzvah on Sukkos, when at that time there's the mitzvah simcha of Sukkos. Like the Rambam, it's l'chatchila clear. The whole Simchas Beis Hashoava is Simchas Yom Tov. It's Simchas Yom Tov of Sukkos. In the Beis HaMikdash, there was a new expression to this mitzvah. There was a new chavivus, a new passion that was expressed to the Simcha. So when the Rambam says, mitzvah laharbo is besimcha zu, when the Rambam is speaking about simcha zu, which simcha is he talking about? Not a new simcha, not a new mitzvah, not a new chiyuv min haTorah. The mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov, of all the Yomim Tovim, is emphasized. It's celebrated with a ribui, with excessiveness. Excessiveness both in quantity, excessiveness also in quality. If so, you can't ask a question why this simcha is doicha, why this simcha is not doicha, Shabbos and Yom Tov. If you're going to tell me it's a mitzvah esem in HaTorah, It would be doicha the Issa D'Rabbanan of Shabbos and Yom Tov. It's true that the simcha is connected to the pasuk. Usmachtem lefnei Hashem Elokeichem shivas yomim. It's also true that when I'm dancing Simchas Beis Hashoava with a flute and a cymbal and a harp or a guitar or whatever, a navel, a lyre or a lute, whatever the instruments the Rambam brings, it's true that when I'm doing that, that moment I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov, no question. I'm fulfilling the mitzvah. But there's no chiyuv min ha-Torah on this simcha yisera, on this extra explosion of simcha and sukkahs that the Torah obligates me. Because this mitzvah sessay of Simchas Yom Tov, you're Mekayim the first day of Sukkot, just like you're Mekayim it in America, just like you're Mekayim it in other places in Eretz Yisrael, just like you're Mekayim it in Australia, just like you're Mekayim it Pesach in the Beis HaMikdash, and around the world, just like you're Mekayim it Shavuos in the Beis HaMikdash, just like you're Mekayim it Shmini Atzeres, Vayisa Ach Sameach L'Rabbis, the Gemara says Vayisa Ach Sameach L'Rabbis Yom Tov, Ha'achron Shel Chag. Everybody knows the famous word of the Vilna Gaon. Vayisa Ach Sameach means you should only be happy. You should only be happy. How is that L'Rabbis? How is that L'Rabbis? So he teaches Pashtim Pshutir Shel Mikra. All other days of Sukkot, you're not only happy. There's lulav, there's esrig, there's sitting in a sukkah, there's nisach hamayim, there's a lot going on. Shmini Atzeres, it's Ach Sameach. How are you Mekayim it then? How are you Mekayim Pesach Shavuos? You're Mekayim it Shabbos, you're Mekayim it Yom Tov, you're Mekayim the mitzvah of Simcha. But this hanhaga in the Beis HaMikdash that Chazal felt, we want to give extra expression to the general Simchas Yom Tov. How are we going to do it? Through this whole extraordinary display of festivities with instruments. That couldn't be Doicha Shabbos and Yom Tov, which is an Issa D'Rabbanan, even though we say Ein Shmuz B'Mikdash. Here we go back to the two answers of Tosfos, which also explains the Aruch LaNer and other Acharonim ask, from the Mishnah it seems like they fixed up the place Mitzvah Yom Tov. The Rambam puts in a word, Erev Yom Tov, they did all the work. When you read the Pashtas, the Sugya, it seems like Mitzvah Yom Tov for Rishon Shel Chag, that's when they fixed up the place. The Rambam says Erev Yom Tov. According to this, it's clearly understood. Since this Simcha Yisera is not obligated Min HaTorah, you could be Mekayim Simchas Yom Tov and you did it. This is the Rabbanan gave expression to a special Simcha on Sukkot because of the emphasis of Simcha in Torah. Therefore, you can't work on Chol HaMoed. This couldn't be Doicha Malach and Chol HaMoed. So the Rambam says, you masakin at Erev Yom Tov. If this is the case, when the Rambam says, Mitzvah laharbes b'simcha zu, once we understand that this Simcha Yisera is not a separate chiyuv, that Sukkot, the Rambam learns, the Torah says for 7 days you have to do a whole new Simcha, a special mitzvah. If that's the case, how are you doing it the first day of Yom Tov? What are you doing? You said this is what you do. You dance, you sing. So give me something the first day. That would be a big question. You cancel it out the first day. Why are you making distinctions in people? What's your source for it? Why would you do this in the mitzvah Siman HaTorah? We're learning no. Simchas Yom Tov is a Simchas Yom Tov that's never touched. Not Shabbos and not Yom Tov. Here, the Rambam says, not it's a mitzvah essay in the Beis HaMikdash to make a Simcha Yisera. Ha'isa sham b'mikdash Simcha Yisera. Mitzvah laharbes b'simcha zu. This is it. Mitzvah laharbes b'simcha zu is in the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov. No. It's the ha'isa, this expression, but when you do that, you're mekayim v'smachtem l'fnei Hashem Elokeichem. Yeah, because when you do this Simchas Beis Hashoava, of course you're being Mekayim Simchas Yom Tov. That's why they're doing it.
Rambam says mitzvah means it's kiyum mitzvah.
Yeah, mitzvah, of course it's a kiyum mitzvah.
Obligation to do the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to do the mitzvah.
Well, he's talking about laharbos. He's talking about laharbos. To be marbin, this simcha, which simcha? This simcha of Simchas Yom Tov, which that's why he starts off Afal Pi. It's not Stam Afal Pi is a Hakdama. That. Yeah.
What does it mean? Simchas
Simchas Yom Tov. It also says Vayisa'ach Sameach, but we don't make a new mitzvah.
The Torah says more.
That's it. That's it.
The Torah says more.
That's what think about it. That's what think about it. The Torah makes such a powerful thing from Simcha and Sukkos. So Hoysa Shama Mikdash Simcha says at Sukkos we have to celebrate in a new way.
The Torah Kufa says it. Why isn't that the mitzvah? The Torah Kufa says to be married. Why isn't that it in itself?
Because the Smach Lefnei Hashem Elokeichem b'Pashtus is used for lulav. To make a new mitzvah, the Rambam can't make a new mitzvah. That's used for lulav. You have to shake lulav 7 days.
So the Rambam went to the south from the other bus.
He says that clearly. He says clearly in Perek Zayin that it's lulav, which is pshutish of the mikra. You're talking about l'kachtem l'chem bayom erishim pri yitzad kapes maram anafetz office.
Why did you bring that this bus over here?
Because this was the source.
And why did you bring that?
Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. Because Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem.
What is the harvest? What is the harvest?
But in the Beis Hamikdash, they didn't do this outside of the Beis Hamikdash.
I want to show where it was.
Yeah, that's Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. Yeah, in other words, the fact that the Torah, when it wants to emphasize an extra simcha on Sukkot, puts that simcha where Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem, where V'samachta b'chagecha is not Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem.
That's some source. It's not the source.
Right. That's why he says, Hoysasham, Shenemar, Mitzad the Posuk V'samachta Lifnei Hashem Elokeichem. It's a Chazal eingeführt. The Chazal instituted this in the Beis Hamikdash, based really on a hergish, on a passion of how to do it, simply how to do it, to give it a special structure that was uniquely happy and uniquely joyous beyond regular limitations, as the Chazal describe and the Rambam describes at length. If so, the whole idea is chiv of mitzvah. It's really the love of the mitzvah. It's really cherishing the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov, and cherishing the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov by Sukkos, which was triggered by the Shenemar, Usmatn Lefnei Hashem Elokeichem Shivas Yamim. It's not a chiyuv of 7 days of a unique simcha that we're doing, that the Torah tells us to do, where no one would ever make distinctions. Nobody says, who should shake a lulav? The Rosh Hashiva. Who should shake a lulav? Maybe he'll get the nicest esrog. But who should shake it? We don't do that. In Simchas Yom Tov, we also don't make such distinctions. But since the whole idea here was a feeling of chiv of mitzvah, an emphasis in Simchas Yom Tov mitzvah, the love, this is all dependent on a person's experience of Simchas Yom Tov. A person's feeling. It's not that the Torah obligates. The Torah never told them to do this. Hashem said you should be happy on Yom Tov. You should be happy on Sukkos, especially on Sukkos, 3 psukim. But this is the Jew who feels the closeness and feels the kedusha and feels the intimacy. So this is something that's very, very dependent on human passion, on human experience, on the human relationship, on the depth of the human relationship. How much you're experiencing the love of the mitzvah. How excited are you going to get? Sukkos. How excited? They say the Baditchev, the Kedushas Levi. Isru Chak Sukkos. He waited, he didn't put on Tefillin Chalamayid because the Zohar. So he waited at night, Isru Chak, to put on Tefillin. The Tefillin was behind the glass. And he went to he took his hand through the glass. He didn't realize, and suddenly, as he puts on the Tefillin on his arm, he sees that the Tefillin is red. He didn't realize. So this, of course, depends on the human being's experience. How much there is the feeling of the chvivus of the mitzvah of Machtam Lefnei Hashem Elokeichem Shivas Yamim on Sukkos. So therefore we understand, this wasn't a takana to limit people. It was like almost automatic. The Bali Madrega, people of great level. How did they celebrate it? They danced and they jumped and they whistled and they hopped and they played and they sang. Everybody else, they also celebrated. They're also Jews. Those are Simchas Yom Tov. And they celebrated Shabbos and Yom Tov. They celebrated it based on their experience. Bayin Liras V'Lishmaya, that's also an experience of Simcha. Listening, watching is also a very joyous experience. If that's the case, we understand why the Rambam puts in all these categories. He's not telling a story. By the Rambam, generally, he doesn't tell stories. Much of the stories of Simchas Beis Hashoava he deletes. You read Masechta, you learn through the Gemara and Perek HaCholel. There's a lot of stories. The Rambam doesn't tell us any of them. We don't know how the Shimon ben Gamliel used to juggle 8 torches of fire from the Rambam. That's not the function. The Rambam is a sefer of halacha, not a sefer of stories, unless the story is a halacha. Of course, the Rabbanon or Deiraisa. So the Rambam brings all these categories, not stam, because each of these categories has a special quality. These people, these categories, each category represents a different madrega, a different characteristic, a different quality, and therefore a different experience of Torah and mitzvahs, a different experience in the chavivus. Based on who you are, your emotions are different. And based on this, we could also see how the Rambam got all these categories, all these names. And that is, when you learn through the sugya of Simchas Beis Hashoava Bavli, is a Masechta Sukkah, the 5th Perek. You learn it in Yerushalmi. It's also, of course, Masechta Sukkah, the 5th Perek. And both Bavli and Yerushalmi tell the story of Simchas Beis Hashoava. Some things are similar, some things are different, some things are here and not here, and conversely. When you read through Bavli and Yerushalmi, all the sugyas of Sukkah on Simchas Beis Hashoava, you see that Chazal bring only the names of a few Tanoim who celebrated Simchas Beis Hashoava in a unique way and said special things during Simchas Beis Hashoava. Now, obviously, all the Tanoim who were by the Beis HaMikdash or in Yerushalayim who were capable of, certainly they all celebrated Simchas Beis Hashoava, which is a din d'Rabbanan, based on Usmachtem Lefnei Hashem Elokeichem, according to the Rambam. And of course, many danced and many said things, whatever they did. But the Chazal chose literally, you could count on your fingers, a few Tanoim who they decided to tell their story, what they did and what they said by Simchas Beis Hashoava. The Rambam, it looks like, learns that when the Gemara enumerates these few Tanoim with their names, it's not stam the Gemara is putting in a story. The Gemara is actually saying a din, a geder, a halacha. Each of these Tanoim had a certain life. They represented a certain life. They had a certain vocation, something they were involved in especially. And therefore, by the Gemara mentioning these particular Tanoim with their name and what they did, according to the Rambam, is a din, it's a halacha. That Simchas Beis Hashoava is divided into different categories based on the individual hergish of these individual Jews, of chavivus, of simcha, and it includes all the possible categories that exist by the Jewish people, in addition, of course, to Klal Yisrael, all men and women which come liris v'lishmaya. By these sugim, you have a special chavivus ha-mitzvah. Who are all the Tanoim that I mentioned? It's only Tanoim, of course, not Amirayim, because this is only in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, and after Bayis Sheni, the Amirayim, of course, are much later. So you go through all of them, one by one. You have Sukkah, Dafnun Gimel Amid Aleph, Tanya. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, Kshahayu Nismeichim Simchas Beis Hashoava Lo Reinu Shina Beineinu. When we celebrated Simchas Beis Hashoava, this is the end of Bayis Sheni. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya was a Levi. He was from the Meshorerim. He would do the daily. He was one of the vocalists of the musicians in the Beis HaMikdash. He saw the Churban also. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya said, "Lo Reinu Shina Beineinu." We did not see sleep in our eyes. Ketzat, Shar Rishona, the first hour of the morning, sunrise. Let's say just for purposes of clarity, 6 o'clock a.m. Tamid Shel Shachar. They offered the lamb. Misham, from there Litfilah, we went to Daven. Shachris. Remember, this is Bayis Sheni, so there's already davening. Bayis Rishon, there's no nusach of davening. Bayis Sheni, there's a clear nusach of davening. Misham lekarben musaf. From there, interesting, we go back to the Beis HaMikdash, to the karben musaf for Sukkot. Next, Misham letfilas hamusafin. Then we go to daven musaf. People don't realize, at the Beis HaMikdash, they made the karben, and then they davened. Misham lebeis medrash. From there's being going and learning. We did the same thing today. Without the karben musaf. But from Tfilas Musaf is being come and learn it. Misham lachilu shriya. From there we went to eat and drink. Misham letfilas hamincha. We went to daven mincha. Misham letamid shel bein arbayim. We went to the karben tamid. Mikan ve'elech l'simchas beis Hashoava. And then Simchas Beis Hashoava a whole night. So who could sleep? Lo reinu shina beineinu. So the Gemara right away asks, it's impossible. Ha'omer shvua shel ha'eshen shloisha yamim. It's impossible a person not to sleep for 7 days. The Gemara says, "Menamnemi akas v'da'adodi." They would snooze on the shoulders of their colleagues, meaning as they were dancing, Simchas Beis Hashoava. It's an interesting type of shluff. As you're dancing, you took a little nap, a little nimnum, a little snooze on the shoulders of your chaver. That's how they slept for 7 days of Sukkot. You have to know how they slept outside of a sukkah. Menamnemi akas v'da'adodi l'chayre shinas arai.
Shinas Ara is also chutz l'sukkah. The Tashbetz asks this question. The Tashbetz asks, Shinas Achilas Ara you can eat outside of a sukkah. Shinas Ara you can do. Menamna miyakasvi da'adadi, there was there's no sukkah there. They're dancing Simchas Beis Hashoava. How did that happen? Okay, that's a separate shmooze. But I'll call upon him. This is Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, he's not the only one who didn't sleep. A lot of people didn't sleep. He says his friends also didn't sleep. They were all on each other's shoulders. But the Gemara mentions him, Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. The Rambam takes this name. Who is Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya? Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya, the Gemara says in B'chayros Daf Ches, he was chosen to debate Savi Debei Asuna, the elders of Athens, the greatest of the Greek philosophers living in Athens in Greece, who was chosen to debate 60 sages, 60 of the elders of Bei Asuna of Athens, a whole sugya in Masechta B'chayros, a riddle-like debate, Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. The Gemara says in Chagiga Daf Hey, when Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya was on his deathbed, his friends asked him, "Mai ta'ave alon mayapikursim." What are we going to do now with all the heretics? We're not going to have anybody to answer. Without you, we're not going to have anybody to debate, to answer. Gemara in Chagiga. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya answered them, don't worry, of the Eitzah Mibonim Nisracha Chachmasam. The Pasuk says in Yirmiyah, when advice is lost from the children, their wisdom is also decreased. Don't worry about it. It's going to work both ways. We won't have such Chachamim. They also won't have such Eibe Chachamim. Zelo Mazeh. This is Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya. So the Rambam, you take a look at his first category, Gdoile Chachme Yisrael. Rabbi Yeshua ben Chananya is the epitome, the paradigm of Chachme Yisrael, of the great sages of Yisrael, who obviously experienced Torah mitzvahs, the chvivus of Torah mitzvahs, in a unique, individual way based on the Chachma of Gdoile Chachme Yisrael. There's a unique explosion of Simcha on Sukkah, Simchas Beis Hashoava. The next Gemara, same Amid, Nun Gimel. Tanya Amr Lav Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, Kshay Sameach Simchas Beis Hashoava, Haya Noitel Shmoina Avukas Shaloir, V'Zayre Kachas V'Noitel Lachas V'Noi Gezu Bezu. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel would take 8 torches of fire and juggle them, and one would not touch the other. 8 torches, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Ksho Mishtachave, Noyish Shnei Gudlav Baretz V'Soiche V'Noishe Kesaritzpe V'Zoike V'Enkol Birya Yechoyle Lasas Kein Bezu Kid. He would bow down to Hashem. Imagine, he would have his 2 thumbs etched in the ground, he would prostrate himself and bend down and kiss the earth with his mouth and come right back up. And nobody can do this. Nobody can display this type of, alacrity, athleticism in Avodas Hashem like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. Who was Reb Shimon ben Gamliel? We can't confuse this with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel later, who was one of the Sanhedrin. This is in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. This Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, the Gemara tells us in Shabbos Daf Tesvav, is the Nasi of the Sanhedrin. He is the son of Reb Gamliel Hazaken, the old Reb Gamliel, who's the grandson of Hillel. This is all at the end of Bayesheni. He is the Nasi of the Sanhedrin. When the Rambam wants to describe the Nasi of the Sanhedrin in Hilchas Sanhedrin Perek Aleph and Yad HaChazaka, the Rambam says you have 70 people. But then you take the Gadol Shebechachma, the one who's the greatest of them, and you make him a Rosh Alein, and he is Nasi B'chol Makom. He is called the Nasi B'chol Makom. He's number 71, so to speak, representing Moshe Rabbeinu in his generation, who's number 71 of the Sanhedrin. The Nasi is called the Rosh Sanhedrin, the head of the Sanhedrin. Therefore, the Rambam's next category is G'dolei Chachmei Yisrael. The Rambam has Rosh Yeshivas, we'll get to that, Sanhedrin. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel represents the Sanhedrin, he's the Rosh Sanhedrin, but he's also a chaver of all the Sanhedrin. And the Rambam puts that into a special category because Reb Shimon ben Gamliel is also one of the few Tanoim mentioned uniquely by Simchas Beis Hashoava, even though there were probably more. Next piece of Gemara, Tanya Amra Lav Hillel Hazaken Shoy Sameach B'Simchas Beis Hashoava Amar Kain Imanikan Hakelkan V'Imenikan Mikan. When Hillel the elder, this is again Hillel who is the older even, he's more than 100 years before Churban Bayesheni. When he dances, he says, if I'm here, everybody is here. If I'm not here, who is here? Again,
A good shia would be, what does Hillel mean here? Rashi's interpretation, Tosfos' interpretation, Al Pi Pshat, Remez, Drush, Sod. Hillel, the Gemara says in Shabbos, was Anvesan. He was the great humble man, but he says, Imanikan, Hakalkan. If I'm here, everybody is here, everything is here. If I'm not here, there's nothing here. Rashi says he was referring to Hashem. Tosfos has a different interpretation. There's a whole Yerushalmi on this. That's a separate sugya. But here's Hillel HaZaken. Who is Hillel HaZaken? Hillel, the Gemara uses here the word Hillel HaZaken. Not usually, many times Hillel is mentioned without the term Zaken. Here he's mentioned the term Zaken. Every expression of Chazal and its place is meticulous. So the Rambam learns here, this is also part of the description. Hillel is participating in Simchas Beis Hashoava as a Zaken. So the Rambam puts in, G'dolei Chachmiso, Rosh Yeshiva, Sanhedrin Chasidim, V'Haskenim. This is epitomized by Hillel HaZaken. In Bavli, you only have these three. Shimon ben Yeshua ben Chananya, Shimon ben Gamliel, Hillel HaZaken, Sukkah, and Gimel Amud Aleph. You come to Yerushalmi, Masechta Sukkah, Perikei Halacha Dalet. He also brings Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. He brings Hillel with the different things that Hillel said, and then he brings one more. Ben Yehoy Tzadok, Haya Mishtabeach Bikfitzoisov. There was a man named Ben Yehoy Tzadok who used to, Mishtabeach is, I don't know if the word is brag, but he used to Mishtabeach. What's the right word? Rabbi Krieger. Mishtabeach. No, reflect Zichloiben. No, himself. He not loved. Mishtabeach. You just said in the morning, Yishtabach Shimcha. He would praise himself with his leaps, with his jumps. Ben Yehoy Tzadok used to leap. Simchas Beis Hashoava, such leaps and bounds. You can imagine what the acrobats looked like over there by Simchas Beis Hashoava. Shimon ben Gamliel, 8 torches, and Ben Yehoy Tzadok is jumping and Mishtabeach. He would praise himself for the jumps he gave by Simchas Beis Hashoava. Who is this man Ben Yehoy Tzadok? Stam, the Mishnah, the Yerushalmi should put in another name of somebody without any point, without any reference, without any explanation, without any halacha, without any lesson, would be difficult to comprehend. But the truth is, when you go through the Rishim of Tanoim, we know that there was a Tana, Reb Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok. The Seder Adoros has an entry of him and brings the sources where Reb Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok is mentioned. But when you look at the life story of Reb Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok, there's nothing mentioned about him. Reb Yeshua ben Chananya we know. Hillel HaZaken we know. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel we know. We don't know anything about Reb Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok. If we know nothing about Rabbi Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok, so all we could know is that he's called Rabbi Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok and we use the name. We have to say that what we learned from Reb Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok is indicated in his name, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok. What would that be? The Tosefta says at the end of Maseches Ediyos that Mi sheyesh lo talmidim koyre noisei Rabbi. Somebody who has talmidim, who teaches students, that's the definition of who you call Rabbi. That means Rabbi Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok was a Rosh Yeshiva. So when the Rambam is looking for the next category of Simchas Beis Hashoava, which Tana is mentioned, he puts in Rosh Yeshivas. G'dolei Chachmi Yisrael, Rishon ben Chananya. Sanhedrin, Shimon ben Gamliel. Skenim, Hillel. Chasidim Anshe Ma'aseh, a Mishnah, a Masechta Sukkah. Rosh Yeshivas is Shimon ben Yehoy Tzadok. You'll ask a good question. Here in Yerushalmi, it's without Rabbi. Ben Yehoy Tzadok Mishtabeach B'Kvitzoisav. It's a counterintuitive. It's a Charaya Lister. He brings here without the word Rabbi. But l'chayda for this, the answer is clear. The Yerushalmi is saying that he's praising himself. He's talking about himself. Even though the one who's writing it in Yerushalmi is telling us what he said about himself, but he's saying how he spoke about himself. When you speak about yourself, you don't call yourself Rebbe. We know the Gemara with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and Brachas. Right? How did he call himself? He said, Ilmole ben Zakkai. He called himself by your father's name, not even by his own name. Ilmole hitiach ben Zakkai es roishai. Ben Zakkai. This is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Even though Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai wasn't the Sanhedrin and had Talmidim, etc., and was Rabbi. But nonetheless, for yourself, you don't use the word Rabbi. So therefore, that's the category of Rabbi. The Rambam does not bring Balei Tshuva. The Rambam brings Chassidim. The Rambam learns, it seems, that the Braisa is elucidating the Mishnah, and Chsidim and Anshe Maisa already includes also the category of Baal Tshuva. Why? Because there's a machloikas of Rashi and Rambam how you teach Chassid. Rashi in Masechtas Sukkah on the word Chsidim says, Kol Chassid have a Chassid meikare. The definition of a Chassid is he was always pious. The Baal Tshuva is the person who changed his life. He transformed his life. So the Chassid can't include the Baal Tshuva. Rashi clearly says, Kol Chassid have a Chassid meikare. In this Sugya, Masechtas Sukkah, Perek HaChala. So therefore, Rashi would learn it's a separate category. The Rambam in Hilchas Deis says, the famous Rambam, he says, Mishu medakte kalatzmei beyoyser. V'yisrachik mideye beinenis, l'tzad zeh, nikra chassid. The Rambam teaches a chassid, somebody who behaves in a way that's lefnim mishuras hadin. He doesn't only follow the intermediary way that's perfect, not like this, but he adds, he increases. He goes the extra mile. That's the definition of chassid. Nikra chassid. That's the pious Jew. According to the Rambam, this behavior could be by a tzaddik meikare, could be by a chassid meikare, could be by a Baal Tshuva. Fakert could be even more by a Baal Tshuva, as you sometimes see practically. So therefore, the Rambam learns that Chsidim in the Mishnah could mean Sai Chsidim, and Sai Anshe Maisa, and Sai Bali Tshuva, even though the Braisa, as usual, elaborates and sometimes dissects a word and brings into it extra categories, but it's not a new type of category that the Rambam has to mention in Simchas Beis Hashoava when he wants to bring out that every type of category of Gedolei Yisrael, whether it's Chachmei Yisrael, whether it's Rosh Yeshivas, whether it's Sanhedrin, whether it's Chsidim, whether it's Skenim, whether it's Anshe Maisa, who have a special, unique experience of love in Torah and mitzvahs generally, and therefore in Sukkahs they have an explosion of Simcha. So the Rambam brings all these categories based on the paradigms that he learned is the way to touch up why the Chazal bring all these Tanoim, and the rest of the nation fulfilled this mitzvah de Rabbanan of this Simcha, which was the fulfillment of the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov in a more excessive, passionate way through Lidas V'Lishmaya. If this is the case, Im Keinim Advarim, then the Rambam's addition at the end with Simcha Shal Mitzvah can't be more appropriate than right here in this location. Because what is the Rambam saying in the next halacha? HaSimcha sheyismach ha'adam ba'asiyas ha'mitzvahs u'ba'avas hakel shetziveh ben avodah g'dolehi. There's mitzvahs. We have 630 mitzvahs. Being happy when you do a mitzvah is not the mitzvah. The mitzvah of shaking lulav is shaking lulav. The mitzvah of putting on tefillin is putting on tefillin or wearing tefillin. The mitzvah of putting on tzitzis, of putting on a mezuzah, of giving tzedakah, of celebrating Shabbos, of learning Torah, whatever the mitzvah is. Every day, every week, every month, every year. These are mitzvahs with a definition of the mitzvahs, whatever it is. Machshava, or dibur, or maisa, whatever the mitzvah is. From birchas hamazon to tefillah, from emunah to ava, from yirah to limud Torah, from tzedakah to kashrus. But the Rambam is saying here, there's a mitzvah. But the simcha, the joy that accompanies a mitzvah, ha-simcha sheyismach adam, the simcha that accompanies a mitzvah, and the simcha that comes from loving the God who gave me this mitzvah. And when I do this mitzvah, I'm connecting. I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of this Hashem whom I love. This simcha, the Rambam says, don't underestimate it. It's not the mitzvah itself. You did the mitzvah. You could even do the mitzvah if you're miserable. I think we know such types of experiences. You did the mitzvah. But don't think it's a small thing. It's avoid the gedolah. It's a huge avoid, and he means two things. Avoid the gedolah means it's great, it's awesome. Don't think it's insignificant. Don't think it's not significant. Also, avoid the gedolah means sagrois, like we say in Yiddish, sagrois avoida. It's not always so simple. It's a big. You have to work on it. It's a heavy avoid. It's a big avoid. And then he brings all the pratim in it. According to this mahalach in the Rambam could have put it elsewhere. Could have put it anywhere. Could have put it in Hilchas Yom Tov also. But here is exactly where it fits. Why? Because according to the Rambam, this is a reflection exactly of Simchas Beis Hashoava. What's Simchas Beis Hashoava? There's no mitzvah of Simchas Beis Hashoava. There's a mitzvah to be happy on Sukkot. A mitzvah to be happy at Pesach, a mitzvah to be happy at Shavuos. Sukkot is unique. We have a lot of other mitzvahs, Nesach Hamayim, Lulav. It says 3 times in Chumash, but there's a mitzvah to be happy on Yom Tov. How are you happy on Yom Tov? In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, the Gemara says, Ein simcha le b'basar, Ein simcha le b'yayin. the time of the Beis Hamikdash, and now v'samachta b'chagecha, Chazal say, and the Rambam reason in Ilchos Yom Tov, you have to make every person happy according to what makes him happy. As the Rambam says, your wife you have to buy clothes and jewelry before Yom Tov in order to bring simcha. Your children you have to buy, as he says, kloyas ve'egoizim. The Rambam wrote about things that didn't have MSG and they were healthy. Kloyas and egoizim, not lollipops, not candies, not potato chips, not black and whites. Kloyas and egoizim. Scorched wheat and nuts. Those are healthy snacks. Just a ha'arab alma. Why do we make differences over there? It's a mitzvah saseh min ha-Torah. There it's not a shaila. V'samachta b'chagecha ato v'itcho v'techa. What makes my wife happy is not going to make my 2-year-old happy. What makes me happy is not going to make my teenager happy. It would have been nice if yes, but it's not always the case. You have to find how to make people happy. I understand that. That's every Yom Tov. That's also Sukkos. And there were the Karbonos Shlomim. And the Rambam says, but that's not the Karbonos Shlomim are not the end. That's how you do it. But then there's also making everybody besimcha. Suddenly the Rambam is mechadesh a new word. That besides that simcha, which is a mitzvah, the Jews felt a tremendous passion about the simcha of Sukkos, about this mitzvah. And because of that, they instituted the whole mitzvah d'Rabbanan of what we call Simchas Beis Hashoava, even though the Rambam doesn't call it Beis Hashoava. If so, the Rambam applies this to the whole Yiddishkeit. It's exactly the same thing. You have mitzvahs. I could put on tefillin in the morning. I could shake lulav in the morning. I could learn Torah in the morning. I can bench in the morning after breakfast. And the mitzvah is a mitzvah. But then there's the simcha that comes with the mitzvah. Without that simcha, you did the mitzvah. Nobody can say you didn't do the mitzvah. But that simcha, the Rambam says, is an incredible addition to the mitzvah, avodah gdoilahi. And it demonstrates a unique relationship with Yiddishkeit. And somebody who runs away from that simcha because of arrogance and pompousness, the Rambam says he's a chayte and he's also a shaita, he's a fool. Chayte versteich, shaita also. He doesn't get it. He has no wisdom, he has no depth, he has no perception. In other words, it's exactly the same. But over here he uses the word avodah gdoila. And we understand why. First of all, because on Sukkos, you're already anyway besimcha. So you're adding to the simcha. About Pasha to Mitvach, it comes a regular Wednesday after daven mincha, after give tzedakah, after say a bracha, answer Amen Yesh Meirabah, do somebody a favor, learn a shtickle Gemara, learn a pasuk Chumash. I'm not always besimcha. It's not the atmosphere of Sukkos, man simchaseinu simchas Yom Tov. So the Rambam has to say avodah gdoila and bring from the Melech David mefazes and mecharker lifnei Hashem. If so, the Rambam here is going in order. He starts off with Kol HaMoyadim, where there's a Simchas Yom Tov. Continues with Sukkos, where there's also a Simchas Yom Tov. But in the Mikdash, it was experienced, Haisanai Heges, Sham B'Mikdash, B'Simcha Yisera, a whole new Simcha, because of the Chavivus for the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov. The love for Simchas Yom Tov. The Rambam says, Sukkos is soon going to be over. People are already thinking, Sukkot is going to be over. Don't think it's time to go into depression mode. Don't think it's time to go into sadness mode. The Rambam says, a whole year, there's the simcha of mitzvahs and avos hakel. And the question is, when is a Jew not involved in some form of mitzvah? Either you're doing a mitzvah saseh, or a mitzvah loisasa, or kol masecha l'shem shamayim, or b'chol d'rechecha deyu, part of a mitzvah, hechsha mitzvah, connected to a mitzvah. Kol masecha l'shem shamayim, b'chol d'rechecha deyu, as the Rambam himself says in Hilchos Deis. That means 24 hours a day, a Jew is involved in some level in avodas Hashem. Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha, therefore, is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So this simcha that's an avodah gedola, to be completely free and open and joyous and happy and full of celebration, to the point that David HaMelech's wife thinks he's embarrassing himself because he's jumping and leaping. And the Rambam says, this is the epitome of Chachma. This is the epitome of wisdom. This is the epitome of Avodas Hashem. This is the epitome of self-respect. This is real self-respect. A whole year, the simcha that goes with all the mitzvahs. I'll tell you an interesting vart, I'll finish with this. The Gemara says in Masechta Brachas, Asur la daf lamed aleph, Asur la adam sheyamali schoik piv ba'olam haza. A person in this world, before Mashiach comes, is not allowed to fill up his mouth with what we call frivolous laughter, like hululus. Shenemar az yamali schoik pin sheneinurin. The Gemara tells a story, the Brachas lamed amid beis, that Abaye saw Rabbi. Rabbi was his uncle, Rabbi was his stepfather. He raised him, and he was his Rebbe. Abaye saw Rabbi the havaka bodach tuva. He was very freilich. He was very bdicha. Bdicha is in a very humorous, happy, joyous, jolly state. So Abaye tells his Rebbe, Gilui birada, shteitach, to be happy with awe, with ra'ada, with fear, with awe. So Rabbi says, Anot tefillin kamanachna. I'm wearing tefillin, or I'm putting on tefillin. The same Ma'aser Reb Zayda saw Reb Yirmiyah, and he saw also Reb Yirmiyah was very, very loose and joyous and uninhibited. And he says again, there's a concept of yira, of awe, and Reb Yirmiyah says again, I'm putting on tefillin. The way most people teach the Gemara, and it's the mashmos of Rashi and Bipshat, is basically, don't think I forgot that there's God. Like Rashi says, Mem shalto yalai. I'm putting on tefillin. I'm wearing tefillin. When you put on tefillin, what are you doing? Like it says in Shulchan Aruch and Simon Chafei, Shibud Alev HaMayach. You're dedicating your mind and your heart to Hashem. So don't think I lost awareness. I lost consciousness of Hashem. So don't worry. I'm not just being frivolous and wild and loose and immoral. I'm not in that stage. Like tefillin, I know it's controlled. That's pshat. I saw once a taich from Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, and I think it comes even from earlier from the Baal Shem Tov. He taiches, no, that's what he was answering. Abaye sees Rabbi is so happy. He's loose, he's uninhibited. He says, Hagilu birada. What's with Yira? So he says, I'm not tefillin kamanachna. The joy that you're seeing is coming from the tefillin. Because I'm putting on tefillin, the simcha of the tefillin, that's what's creating this joy. Reb Zayda sees Reb Yirmiyah the same thing. What's going on? He said, I'm not tefillin kamanachna. The whole thing you're seeing it's an experience that's coming from the tefillin. So that's what the Rambam is saying, that the simcha of mitzvahs, which is l'chayra additional to the mitzvah, this is avoid the gedoyle, because HaMelech mefazes and mecharker b'chol ois lifnei Hashem. A guten Moed and a guten Yom Tov, a freilichen Yom Tov. A gut Moed. Was macht er?
What are the full kashrus?
Shekoyach for the hardest.
What are the full kashrus in the Rambam?
Gut Moed. Nice to see you. Gut Moed. Azay still, you let him do all the talking? Gut Moed. Atat fasta? A minute, huh?
Where's your Lulavanasa?
You know where I give a shir in the morning? On top. On that bookcase, top of the bookcase. Yeah, downstairs. 20 downstairs. Was sagt er?
What happened with the Simcha of Yom Rishon?
So that was the whole vart. The Simcha of Yom Rishon is the Simchas Yom Tov. It is Shivas Yom. There's a Simchas Yom Tov, Shivas Yom, Mitzvah Simcha. That's of course Yom Tov Rishon also.
So you're putting that you're saying
you're right. We're not making a separate mitzvah of Simcha Shivas Yomim outside of Simchas Yom Tov. For Samachta B'Chagecha, that says in Parshas Re'eh, that's a Simcha, 7 days of Sukkot, and also Shmini Atzeres, Vayisa'ach Sameach. But there's an extra pasuk that's Medayik Usmacht Mufnei Hashem Elokeich. There's an extra time that Simcha is mentioned, which the Yalkut Shemaini there says that Sukkot, it says 3 times Simcha unique. Not that lahalocha is Simchas Yom Tov by Sukkot, not by Pesach, but it's unique.
I'm tempted to say.
But you understand what I answer?
Yeah, I'm tempted to say that L'kachtem.
Yeah.
L'kachtem L'chamei Rishon. It's not like the Briska, but Beis Hamikdash also the mitzvah only L'kachtem. The Smachtem Shabbos Yom is to add to that to the Simcha. The L'kich Lulav is part of the Simcha of the rest of the days. In other words, the first day is the...
But the Rambam clearly says in Perek Zayin Hilchos Lulav that the Mikdash Mayat Nittel Kol Shiva Shenemar Smach. It's in this pasuk of Daled Minim. It's the same pasuk. Lekachtem lechem bayom harishon pri yitzhada campus.
Yeah, fine, but the first one, that's why it's more than the 1 day. That doesn't mean that's not proof. That's why it's more than 1 day. Lekachtem lechem bayom harishon is ganz kali, so it has to have lekachtem.
Right.
Kol Shiva because of the Shivas Yomim.
It
doesn't mean that the first day is a Shivas Yomim thing. It becomes automatically that's Shivas Yomim.
a Katam Chameyosh, it's a rest on Yos after it. That's why the Simcha, the Simcha from the Simchas Beis Hashoava was on the other 6 days, because that goes into Eretz Machtam, goes on that way.
But Shivas is the 7.
So it's that's full 7. That's full 7. Because this is one Simcha and the other Simcha. Who says you need to do the same Simcha? One could be the Simcha of the Lulu.
But if you're teaching a separate mitzvah for Smachnu Fnei Hashem Elokechem, then you need it the first day also. That's the problem. If you teach it Simchas Yom Tov, Elamai, in the Beis Hamikdash, they were noihig to do an extra simcha. A minig can be doichan issa d'Rabbanan. We're doing a minig, but to celebrate the simcha of Sukkot in a special way, fine, that's a minig. You didn't have minhagim that they add stuff, yeah? But it's not going to be doicha the issa d'Rabbanan, that it can't be.
When you said this insight into,
the simcha meant you. The simcha meant you also.
When you said this insight of the simcha, the object itself brought up the simcha. So it made me think, what's the opposite of the mitzvah? An aveira. What's tshuva of the ahava? It takes the aveira, turns it into a mitzvah. Why? Because there's a simcha, because it's rooted the tshuva in ahava. What am I saying? Does that?
You mean the Gemara says doinus nasa like azachias, Rish Lakish, that when you do tshuva out of love, the aveira becomes a mitzvah.
Becomes the mitzvah. So now the ahava of the tshuva has such a power effect because that's the mitzvah.
So it transforms the aveira.
That's maybe I was thinking.
Yeah, over there it says the explanation that it needs beer because the Marsha asks. The Marsha in Gemara in Masechta Yom at the end of Pevov says lo yehi chote nisker. It's not fair. Somebody doesn't sin.
Yes, be sincere.
He has all these mitzvahs suddenly. So the Baal Tshuva has so many more mitzvahs. Every time he ate chazak.
I get fair for a Baal Tshuva.
Okay, so but it's an interesting thing. Yeah. So the Marsha Tain is that the Gemara means that Baal Tshuva just adds much more mitzvahs because of he wants to compensate. In other places it says that the reason Zoyin is not so like Kazachias is because the Ava that comes with the Tshuva could have only been created by the negativity. It's like somebody who is sick, the way they love their health or their children is a whole different type of love. So in many ways, the Aveira, after they do tshuva out of love, the Aveira becomes retroactively, Lamafreya, the catalyst that brought out this Ava. No, they could have never reached this Ava without that's what you mean, without the Aveira. So it's like so the Aveira is redefined as a chelik of the Ava. Even though when they did it, of course, it was an Aveira.
When you were telling us the story,
Rish Lakish said this. Rish Lakish is the one who said this.
He came from that.
He came from there.
But you said that it's one of the shirim you gave the first day of Yom Tov.
Yeah.
But that person who went through such difficulty.
Yeah.
And he said that difficulty is the only
the way they understood Yiddishkeit.
Because now I'm able to see where I am.
They transform their experience. Their past experience, yeah.
Good, thank you.
Atzlacha, good moyed, and good yom tov.
What are the 4 kashas in our life?
I didn't say all of them.
You said 3. You said it's 7.
Chlakuktan. I don't remember what I said.
I like to be saying the shenema bothers me. The shenema. I don't know how you get the shenema.
Shivas yomim. So how could you be doicha the first? What's the mocker? To make on Mamash the Rambam takes this pasuk, and third he already uses it for lulav. Okay.
That's it. It's 4, 5, 6.
If it's min HaTorah, how could you pater amayaretz and make distinctions bichlal between people? What's the source for such a thing in Torah? The Rambam is moisef sugim that don't exist in the Mishnah or in the Gemara.
That's not a kasha. It's not a kasha.
In other words,
that's not do with
no, it does because. Because if it's a mitzvah sesim in a Torah, so it's a mitzvah sesim in a Torah, of course, every Jew does it differently. Right, no, but once you understand by the Rambam that it's based on the chvivus ha-mitzvah...
It's on the terraces. The kasha is not true.
No, the Mishnah says 2. The Rambam has all these categories. New category. No, he brings the Mishnah, said the Man Shemaisa, but he adds another...
It's not a kasha if you learn the Rambam like that.
Right. And he takes out Balei Tshuva and the whole end about Simchas Shel Mitzvah that he puts dafke here, not an Hilchas Yom Tov. Again, light the husband.
The husband's good.
Yeah. You mean the original in it?
Shenema balls me. The Shenema is very. The Rambam never says Shenema in Inyan. Kedur Yad Chazak. It doesn't say. Shenema means this is the Makor.
Right, but that's why he.
But the Shenema doesn't. It contradicts.
No, but l'chayda that's his word. V'balze steht. Teach in Yiddish. V'balze steht.
Something that's not a. It's not a
I don't know what
mitzvah.
daf mayins and I don't know.
Yeah, all the Rambams. And the Shenema means.
No, it's a kiyum mitzvah sesim in Torah. It's a kiyum. It's not a chiyuv.
The Shenema is going on the Kiyum. Shenema is going on the.
Fine, I'm just saying.
If you like, that's good.
But when you did the simcha, you said you were mekayim of ben
Shenema
Torah.
not going with that. Shenema doesn't mean that. Shenema just means why it was.
Right.
So then.
But sound the
Then
pasuk.
the Shenema doesn't understand. You take me from there, putting in the Shenema. Avadi, right, you get the Kiyum. But then the Shenema means because this is what it says.
V'balze steht. So therefore they may have this minhag. Okay. I mean, I don't know. I've cooked in the chazaka. Thank you for your hardest. Very good shmak.
That's why I always learned the Rambam. This kasha, this is a famous kasha. I always
The
learned that.
Briskerov has it.
Yeah, but he doesn't say this. The Briskerov doesn't say this next.
No, the first word that it's not a din in Isachamayim. Rabbi Rucham Fisher Perlosas. It's not the Griz on this Rambam. It's in
The red one.
the end of Masechta Erkin, right? Masechta Erkin, right?
It's not in the Sefer. It's not in whatever. But this.
But he brings it off Perlo, I think, right? The Gauss of Rucham Fisher Perlo. I'm almost sure.
Some of the Briskerov wasn't written by him, so it's ready.
No, but I think it says over there, maybe in Ha'ara.
Right, it's in Ha'ara.
Yeah, yeah.
He didn't write it, so it doesn't have that. The bonus of the Sefer itself.
Right. I got Maya, I got Yom Tef, I got
I
Maya.
want to tell you an interesting story. My elder zei de was in Rabbi in Williamsburg, 1940 or 1941. They used to go to the East River to say Shir Sayam. Nachdem we Chatar Akida. Zayidi.
Brent Fatashlich.
No.
He went to East.
Sayam.
Oh, Shir Sayam, man. Parshas.
Shvisha place. They
Shvisha
used
place.
to go and they used to Chatar Akida. Ayid. All the sun goes in Europe. Gießt Jiddische Blit und dort tanzt man. So my elder said, es steht in Rambam, Simche is avoide gedoyle. Als geht alles gut, es ist das ein Kind zu sein mit Simcha. Es ist nur, als nicht geht, es ist avoide gedoyle.
A grace, a shvera avoida.
Yeah,
That's what he's told to see it by the. This was the middle of the war.
yeah. He was lived in 1942, 1941.
He lived in Manhattan.
He lived in Williamsburg, South Humor, before that in Boston. 1941, he said this Rambam,
Avoida gedoyle.
ja, man darf tanzen, nach viele, wenn es geht nicht geht.
Avoida gedoyle. Mefazes und mecharka lifnei Hashem. Mefazes und mecharka. Yeah. Hatzlocha Rabbi, bruchim to you. I got moyed, got Yom Tov, got moyed.
I didn't really understand the share.
Okay. But the punchline you understood
I think so, but
that happiness is important in life.
for sure.
A Jew.
How come you didn't start off with a joke?
How come I didn't start off with a joke? It's a different type of shiur. This. The whole shiur was about simcha. I didn't have to start off with a joke. You start off with a joke. The Gemara says that Rabbi used to start off with a joke, so people should get into a good mood.
Right.
But the whole shiur was about being in a good mood. So I didn't have to start off with a joke.
I thought it was too clear. I thought it was.
Er will wissen, was ich nicht angeben mit der Joke. Der ganze Shiur ist gewesen wegen Simcha.
I thought the purpose of the joke was to clear what other people, what everyone was thinking. It clears their mind. They come in there and then they. Okay.
I hear.
Okay. Very nice.
You should have a good Yom Tov, a happy Yom Tov, a freilich Jahr. Moed, a good Yom Tov. Yeah.
Can you speak again?
Tomorrow night.
Oh, at this big break.
Yeah, comes it soon.
And then
Thank
again,
you.
you speak?
Not enough. I don't want you to get sick of
I
me.
mean, this is, I got it now. Really special.
Thank you.
Are you doing anything Shabbos, this coming Shabbos?
What's this coming Shabbos? You mean Shabbos Bereshis?
Yeah.
I mean the regular I speak here in the shul usually. Okay.
That's great.
Very good. Hatzlacha.
Simchas to be specifically on Sukkot, is it Dairaisa? I came
Yeah. Yeah. Simcha and Sukkot is deraisa. That's no question.
Based on the pasuk of Samach.
It says v'samachta b'chagecha. It says v'yisa'ach sameach. It says you should be happy on Yom Tov. Sukkot for sure. It says 3 times Simcha by Sukkot.
Right.
So yeah, there's a mitzvah min ha-Torah. The Chazal instituted in the Beis HaMikdash a special simcha.
And what's a definition on a deeper level of Stam being Sameach? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming.
What's the definition of happiness?
I'm saying, like in
That,
Next question.
that needs another shir, no?
The Malakidim, they want that Simcha is der Geminne kippet to Simcha. I didn't understand. Minne bringt das Shalvas HaNefesh, a Minne jeder Prat. Has a sort of Makar, has a.
Darf dem fragen?
Mile bit of a popular.
But what is I'm saying is.
You want to know what simcha
I'm
is?
saying when we're saying to be midiraisa.
What is to be besimcha?
I'm assuming it's obviously some type of association in Avodas, Avodas Hashem. And
A regel achas.
I guess on Sukkot and on Yom Tov there's a special energy in the world that allows a Jew to feel a little more how good he is, how beautiful he is, how holy he is, how much Hashem loves him, how much Hashem wants him, how much Hashem needs him, how much Hashem wants to be connected to him, how much Hashem cherishes him, how valuable his life is, how much dignity there is in life, how much opportunity there is in his life, how much Hashem yearns for the relationship with him, how significant and valuable every moment is, how much opportunity there is in every moment of his life to connect to truth, to infinity. And that helps create a simcha, a certain simcha.
When the Torah is saying simcha, it's not an action it's more of our hargasha and a machshava.
Well, simcha is an internal experience. It's expressed in action. Simchas Beis Hashoava, they would dance and jump and leap and whistle and sing and play music, and you see that itself, sometimes that's what you need. You have to skip the brain and go straight into the feet. Because if you stick to the brain and the heart, you can get stuck. You go to the feet. The feet are real, simple, authentic, and sometimes you connect through that, and the heart and the mind are also transformed. Sometimes, especially today, we can't afford to always figure it out because you get stuck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
The Busa V'Yayin helps to get make this whole connection.
In the time of the Beis HaMikdash, there was basar, which was the carbon.
The Rambam Zuk is Busa V'Yayin.
No, basar was then. Basar is shalmei simcha. Yayin, today's yayin. Tanoika is a goyzim, but basar is then.
And yayin,
The Baal Shem Tov touched ein simcha ela bebasar means the only real simcha in life is if you transform your basar. Bebasar. Deal with your basar. Find the godliness in your flesh. But the Pashtas basar is the time of the Beis HaMikdash, karbanos. Yayin even now.
like literally.
You drink on Yom Tov, you drink a reviyas of yayin.
Nushim.
Perek Vav, Hilchas Shvisas Yom Tov Perek Vav.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.